Hello everyone, welcome back. We are looking at another topic in government, and this time we are looking at some systems of government that we have. All right, number one, we have what they call a federal system. A federal system of government refers to a strong union of autonomous, that means independent, strong union of autonomous states that come together for so many reasons, okay? And there is constitutional sharing of power between the central governments and other subordinate regions. Okay? So Nigeria is a good example of a federal state. Although some persons have argued that in theory, all right, Nigeria is a federal state, but in practice, Nigeria operates a unitary system. All right, because in a federal state, what happens is that powers are shared actually between the central government. All right, that's the federal capital, okay, and of course the other subordinate unit like the states or regions. Okay, that means each region or state is given power to develop at its own pace. All right, it is given its own power. Each of, for example, in Nigeria, if we are really practicing a federal system of government, then Edo State should be allowed to have its own police. All right, develop in its own self, should be allowed to have its own soldiers, its own laws that will govern it within its own region and all of that. Since the issue of security is just one that is controlled from the central government, Abuja, that is why people will argue with you that in theory, Nigeria may be operating a federal system, but in practice, Nigeria operates a unitary system because issues that concern security and all of that, police, armed forces, they are controlled by the federal government. So essentially, you cannot refer to such as a federal system of government, but unitary in practice. So that's that. Now, take note, in the federal system of government, we have what they call, we have three lists, all right? We have what they call the exclusive list. So under here, we have what they call the exclusive list. Then we have what they call the concurrent list and the residual. We have what they call the concurrent lists. And we have what they call the residual list. Okay, under the exclusive lists, the items we have are exercised by the federal government alone. Issues that concern, currency. For example, currency is only controlled by the federal government. It's not shared with the state government, and that's why we have what they call Central Bank of Nigeria, controlled only by the central government. Then we have issues that concerns immigration. If you want to travel out, issues that concern international passport, all of them are regulated by the federal government, not even states. Okay, so all of them, immigration and all of that, they fall under the exclusive list. What about the police? The police is not controlled by any state government, but the federal. That's why they can withdraw police at all from anybody, right? Because the state does not have its own police. Then what about armed forces? The soldiers, then the Navy, then the Air Force. All of them are controlled by the federal government. So we can say that these are items contained in the exclusive legislative list. Then away from there, we talk about concurrent. The word concurrent means happening at the same time, that's simultaneously. So the word concurrently simply means that items contained here are exercised by both the federal government and the state government. And here we have education, health, they are under the concurrent list. For example, under education, we can have federal university, like University of Benin. Then we can have state university, like Ambrose Ali University in Nepoma. Okay, you can have Edo Boys High School, which is owned by Edo State. Then you can have federal government high school, controlled by the federal government. So issues that concern education, right, is not contained in the exclusive list, but in the concurrent list. Okay, then what about, issue of health? We can have federal hospital, we can have state hospital. All right, Federal Medical Center or Federal Medical Center Owerri. All of those hospitals are controlled by the federal government. What about University of Benin Teaching Hospital? All of them are regulated by the federal government. Okay, then Edo Central Hospital, for example, is controlled by Edo State. So issues of health are controlled by both the federal and the state government. Hence, it is said to fall under the concurrent list. Then what about residual list? Don't forget that there is no item that is controlled by the local government. Local government, they don't extend any to the local government. When you talk about the residual list, items contained there, they are controlled only by the state government. And here we can have chieftaincy affairs, power to confer chieftaincy titles to, rulers or traditional rulers is strictly found under the residual list. Now, without wasting much time, we look at another one called the unitary system of government. When you talk about the unitary system of government, it's a system of government in which powers are concentrated in a single central decision-making body. Take note, unity system is otherwise called centralization, while the federal system is called decentralization. Okay, don't forget that Nigeria, USA, they are said to be practicing federal system, while Britain, for example, operates a unitary system. Okay, unitary system was actually brought into place by Aguiyi in Nigeria when he took over power, but he was removed from office. So unitary system, powers are concentrated in a single central decision-making body. Okay, yeah. And powers are not actually shared to the subordinate units. Okay, yeah. So whatever you need, you rely on the central government for help, for assistance, and all of that. And that's why Nigeria is said not to be operating federal system but central but unitary system, because virtually whatever the state needs, they rely on the federal government, security, currency, everything. So why now saying it's a federal system? That's unitary in practice. So it's only theoretically that we have Nigeria operating a federal system. Then we have what they call confederation. In a confederation, now, autonomous states as independent countries come together, all right, for very powerful and genuine reason, but with a very weak center, all right. Each state that come together to form the government are independent on their own, all right. Then the center is therefore weak because you cannot trample that much on the sovereignty of another country. Okay, a good example of a confederal system of government was the Singambia of 1982. Now, a very powerful one again I would like to give us is United Nations Organization. Although each of these countries are coming together to hold meeting for issues that concern member states, but regardless of that, each member can secede anytime. Like Nigeria can break away from United Nations anytime. All right, USA can break away from UN anytime. Another example is ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. Each member that make up ECOWAS in Africa, they are all independent in their own self. So each one can secede. That's why one of the disadvantages of confederal system or confederation is secession. That ability of each of the states to secede, to break away anytime, because they are all independent. All right, they are not dependent on any country. They are sovereign nations coming together to form a union, but with a very weak center. Then we talk about the presidential system. In our previous videos, we had earlier talked about presidential system, otherwise called the single executive, where the president serves as both the head of state and head of government. As head of government is in charge of the real executive powers, such as signing bills into laws, appointment of, ambassadors, ministers, and top governmental officials. Then, as a head of state that he is, he performs only ceremonial functions, such as acceptance of dignitaries from foreign lands, attending, occasions just to, like ceremonial occasions such as Independence Day celebration and all of that. All of those ones are said to be ceremonial. Then you talk about parliamentary system. Of course, in the parliamentary system of government, the offices are not fused, they are separated. The office of the prime minister, which is head of government, is different from that of head of state, all right, which is a ceremonial head. I told you earlier that when Nigeria gained our independence on the 1st of October 1960, we operated this system, parliamentary system, okay, of which Tafawa Balewa was the prime minister, and the head of state was the Queen of England. But immediately Nigeria became a republic, all right, the Queen ceased to be our head of state, and Nnamdi Azikiwe took over as an indigenous president, all right. So that's that. Now, when you actually look at the next one, which is what? Military system. What's military system? Military system is a system of government headed by the khaki boys. Who are the khaki boys? Headed by the soldiers, all right, men in uniform. Now, don't forget, when a military government takes over power, the first thing they do, of course, they take over power from a democratically elected government through force that we refer to as coup d'etat, all right? Yes. We look at the first thing they do when they take over power is to suspend the constitution for decree. That is why most of the head of state, when they commit havoc, right, Now, right now, you cannot try them because you cannot try them under any law because when they were ruling, they suspended the constitution. That's the sense they use when they come to power through what they call decree. All right, they actually remove the normal constitution with preference to their harsh laws called decree. And at the federal level, the military laws are called decrees, but at the state level, they are called edicts. That's edicts. Okay, yes. So that's that. So military government is not really a good form of government, okay, because it is undemocratic. Okay, they take over power by force called coup d'etat and they rule by decree, okay, which is military harsh laws. So that's that. In our next class, we shall look at another topic. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are still looking at government, and this time a strong topic on the board: monarchy. What is monarchy? Monarchy can be defined as a system of government that is headed by the king, the queen, or the emperor. All right? Emperor is someone that controls an empire. You know, if you have conquered several territories, that makes you an emperor. All right? Because you are now in charge of an empire. So this system of government we refer to as monarchy is quite hereditary. All right, that means it is passed on to the other generation, all right, by births and all of that. So it's not a system of government that is elective, all right. It is a direct opposite of republican government where you have to vote and be voted for. This kind of government, right to office is by birth, called hereditary. And don't forget, in a monarchical system of government, where the first son can take over after the death of the father, we refer to as primogeniture. We refer to it as primogeniture. All right? The first son of the king succeeds the father. All right? Then, if the last son can succeed the father after the death, we refer to such a system of monarchy as ultimogeniture. All right, so that's that. Basically, when you talk about a monarchy, it is a system of government controlled by the king, queen, or the emperor. So this system is hereditary, passed on by birth. All right, if I am a king, after my demise, my son takes over. After the death of my son, my grandchild takes over too. All right, so that system is hereditary. Then we talk about what they call different types of, monarchy. Number one, we have what they call the absolute monarchy. All right. In an absolute monarchy, what happens is that the word of the monarch or the words of the monarch are laws and the actions are final. All right. This kind of monarch in an absolute monarchy does not take decision from anybody. All right. It makes the absolute monarch a tyrant whose words cannot be questioned. All right. Like Frederick the Great of those days. All right. So the words of the monarch in an absolute monarch is actually very, very strong, and the actions cannot be regulated by the provisions of the existing law because the absolute monarch does not have any regard for whatever law is in existence, which is the constitution. But it is not so with a constitutional monarchy. All right? In a constitutional monarchy, the words of the monarch are regulated by the provisions of the existing law. That is the constitution. And in Nigeria today, most of the monarchs that we have are quite constitutional. All right, the Alaafin of Oyo, the powers are regulated by the constitution. The powers of the Alaafin of Oyo cannot supersede that of the governor. All right, Emir of Kano, the powers are regulated by the provisions of the existing laws. All right, in other words, they choose to, rule or govern the people in accordance with the provisions of the existing law. All right, the Oba or the Alaafin or the Emir cannot be a tyrant to the court in such a way that the actions are dictatorial and all of that, because there is still the existence of the constitution to regulate these powers. Okay, so that's what we have about the monarchy. All right, don't forget. In summary, in a monarchy, what happens is that we have hereditary leadership pass on to what the other generation or person by birth. All right, so that's that. And in our next class, we are going to look at what they call democracy. All right, welcome back. We are still looking at government, and the topic before us is economy and political systems. All right, yeah. So what you have on the board is either an economic system realized politically, all right, or so. So we have different systems on the board. They are both economic and political. For example, capitalism is economy and political. Socialism is economic and political, looks at the financial strength and the political system. Communism, and of course, the others, to mention but a few. What's capitalism? Capitalism is a system of governments in which the private individuals are allowed to own, manage the means of production, distribution, and exchange of goods and services. A system of governments in which man is allowed to own, industries, own companies that will generate wealth for him. All right, is referred to as a capitalist economy. Okay, yeah. For example, Nigeria is a perfect, reference when we are talking about a country that practices capitalism. People like Dangote, Otedola, all of them own companies. People that own glue company are capitalists. Dangote is a capitalist because he owns cement industry, he owns salt industry, sugar industry. More recently, he even has petroleum refinery. Okay, so that makes these people capitalists, okay, because they are allowed to own, control, and then manage the means of production in these companies, and then exchange of goods and services. And in a capitalist economy, let me quickly remind you, those who own and control these means of productions are oppressors. Why? Because the money they make compared to the amounts they pay their workers, the gap is too wide. And because they are oppressors, there is a particular name for them. Those who own and control these means of production in a capitalist economy are called the bourgeoisies. So you have bourgeoisies. So you can even find it in your, past question when they ask you that the oppressors in the capitalist economy, what do you call them? They are the bourgeoisies. Okay? Yes. Then those that they oppress, those that are being oppressed are referred to as the proletariat. Proletariat. Okay, so the capitalist state of exploited class workers are the pros, or you call them proletariats. Those that the oppressed that are working for them are the proletariats. Then the oppressors themselves, the capitalists, the bloody capitalists are called the bourgeoisies. Then you talk about socialism. Socialism is an advanced state of capitalism. Socialism came up as a result of the thought of people that the capitalists are oppressors. So because of that, the state you own most of the means of production, distribution, and then exchange of goods and services. A good example of a socialist state is China. All right. We also have Russia. All these are examples of socialist states. Why? Because they own most of the companies, the states own most of the companies, control them rather than individuals controlling everything as we find in Nigeria. Then such, a system is called socialism. Again, socialism is a system of government in which most or major factors of production, distribution, and exchange of goods and services are owned, controlled, and then managed by the state. Don't forget, when you say state in government, it means country. So, socialism was made popular by a man called Karl Marx. Okay? In fact, Karl Marx and Engels. Then, in that, in the views of Karl Marx and Engels, they also postulate, that means they have a book they call the Communist Manifesto, where they had written that we have what they call advanced state of socialism, called communism. In that sense, private individuals are not even given opportunity to own, companies. The state takes over everything. So in a communist state, the state controls all the major means of production, distribution, and exchange of goods and services. Okay, it is believed that no country is yet communist, but some countries are moving towards the realm of the communist states. Examples are China, Cuba, Russia. All of them, they are still in the advanced state of socialism, okay, but they've not really attained that level of communism where the government controls virtually everything. The reason why they've not attained such is that some private individuals still own companies in these regions and all that. So when it gets to that level where the government controls everything, then that is communism. Yes. Where whatever you need is provided, by the government. All right. Yeah, from each according to his ability and to each according to his needs. That is what communism preaches. Whatever you can do for government, you do it according to your ability. Then government in turn provides all your needs. Then we talk about feudalism. In feudalism, what you have is what they call land ownership, a system of government where power lies in the hands of the leader by means of the number of lands owned by such a leader is called feudalism. In this case, a poor peasant, all right, known as serve the nobilities, known as the lords. Those who own the lands are called the lords, while those that work for them are referred to as serfs. So don't forget, a system of government based on land ownership is called feudalism, where those that work for these landlords are referred to as the serfs, while the owners of the land themselves are called the lords. Then you talk about totalitarianism. From the word total, totalitarianism is a system of government in which the government controls everything in the state, including the rights of the citizens and everything that the state owns. Okay? In other words, in totalitarianism, government controls all the rights of the citizens. What does that mean? It means the rights of the citizens are denied them completely. And your life can even be taken for the benefit of the state. That is why totalitarianism is an autocratic or dictatorship government. Another name for totalitarianism is authoritarianism. All right? So authoritarianism, where the total rights of the citizens are denied them. So for a government to be democratic, it must avoid a total. You know the word total, that means you don't have a right, you don't have a say. In our previous class, we had said that in a real government or democracy, everybody has rights. But in a totalitarian system, your right in total are seized by the government, and your life can even be taken, nobody questions them. Fascism. When you talk about fascism, fascism was, actually practiced by a man called Benito Mussolini in Italy. All right, a system of government in which, in fact, it's a dictatorship government in which the private life of the citizens are controlled by the what government. Okay, it means these citizens have no rights at all within the confine of their territory. Okay, so it was popularized by Benito Mussolini. Don't forget that fascism, in fact, all of them are a form of totalitarianism because your rights are denied you. Then you talk about Nazism. Nazism is also a form of totalitarianism or authoritarianism, where your rights are denied. This one was popularized by Adolf Hitler of Germany. All right, citizens are not allowed to own, have a say at all within the country or state where they are residing. All right, that's Nazism. Don't forget, Nazism is credited to, Adolf Hitler of Germany, then fascism to Benito Mussolini of Italy. And you talk about aristocracy, a system of government by the best citizens, okay, by the wealthy class. Yes, those who actually are wealthy, all right, or those who belong to the upper class are given the chance to rule. Okay, then you talk about theocracy. That's a system of government headed by the bishops. Okay, that's by the religious heads. Okay, yeah, practice in Rome. Okay, the Vatican City. All right. So that's theocratic government. Then we talk about gerontocracy. Gerontocracy is a system of government by the old people, all right? Those who are already old, weak, they are those at the end of affairs. A good example is Nigeria. Nigeria practices gerontocratic government. By the time you find our National Assembly, who are those that occupy the place? Old men. Our president is an old man. All the governments we have ever had, all the presidents, they are all old. So we practice gerontocracy. Then we talk about plutocracy. That's strictly government by the wealthy class, government by those that own a lot, all right, by the wealthy class. So a form of plutocracy is even aristocracy, okay? Yeah, and away from there, we talk about oligarchy, all right? What's oligarchy? Oligarchy is a government by the few, all right? For example, military government is a type of oligarchy because powers are only vested in the hands of the few because they take over power by means of what? Force, through decrees and all of that. Okay, through coup d'etat, and when they get there, they rule by decree. Okay, so they are always few. Powers are not extended to the masses. So we say these systems of government here are both economic and political. Okay, because when you have economic power, then you can control politically too. Okay, so that's that. So that's that. In our next class, we look at another topic.